The chanting started just before midnight, and it came from right beneath my bed. I froze, feeling the floorboards vibrate, and I understood with a chilling certainty that something had been summoned, and it had been summoned for me. I had moved into this old village house 3 weeks earlier, hoping that the isolation would quiet my overactive mind. But the locals, Atia, they avoided this place. I'd see them watching me from their doorways, their faces pale, and they never, ever spoke a word after sunset. I just told myself that fear grows easily in silence, that it was nothing. The first night, I heard scratching from inside the walls. On the second, I found candles on the kitchen table, burned all the way down to black wax, candles I never lit. On the third night, a foul smell filled the air, blood and herbs mixed with rot. And then, that same night, the chanting began. I slid out of bed as slowly as I could. The air felt thick, heavy, like smoke, and my own breathing sounded deafeningly loud in the oppressive quiet. The wooden floor was cold and damp under my bare feet. As I bent down to look under the bed, the chanting stopped instantly. The silence was so absolute it pressed against my eardrums. Then, a whisper brushed against the back of my neck. You are ready. I scrambled out of the room, running into the hallway and flicking on every light switch I could find. The bulbs flickered in angry red for a moment before settling into a sickly yellow. That's when I saw them. The walls were covered in symbols, drawn in ash and something darker, something that looked disturbingly like dried blood. They pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, as if the house itself was breathing. I suddenly remembered the landlord's only warning: never open the basement door. I remembered laughing it off. The chanting resumed, louder this time, deeper, coming from directly below the house. I looked down the hall, and my heart stopped. The basement door was wide open. Stone steps led down into utter darkness, but a faint red glow pulsed from the bottom, beckoning me. The smell of iron, of fresh blood, was overwhelming. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to run, but my legs carried me forward, completely against my will, one step at a time. At the bottom, I saw the circle. It was carved deep into the stone floor, filled with twisted, wrong-looking symbols. Black, smoking candles surrounded it, and in the very center lay a book bound in what looked horrifyingly like human skin. Fresh blood dripped slowly from its pages. A woman stood within the circle. She wore a long, black robe stitched with tiny bones that clicked together softly. Her hair floated round her head as if she were underwater, and her eyes were completely, unnervingly white. She smiled, a slow, predatory stretching of her lips, and I felt my heart stutter in my chest. She said my name. She told me I was chosen because I was empty enough to be filled. Chanting was everywhere now, seeming to come from the walls, from the very air, and horrifyingly, from my own mouth. My lips moved without my permission, forming words in a language I didn't know. The woman raised her hands, and the circle ignited. Fire crawled across the stone floor, a cold fire that gave off no heat. Shadows pulled themselves free from the walls, stretching and taking shape. They were tall and thin, with impossibly twisted limbs and faces stretched into eternal, silent screams. Blood ran from their empty eye sockets, pooling at my feet. The woman stepped closer to the edge of the circle. As she moved, her skin cracked and bled. She said the ritual had been waiting for years, waiting for someone like me, someone who would listen. I finally found my voice and screamed, trying to run, but the stone staircase had sealed itself shut. The shadows grabbed my arms, their touch burning like frostbite. The woman pressed the book against my chest, and the symbols on its cover seared themselves into my skin. Pain exploded behind my eyes, and I was flooded with visions. Children buried under the house, villages kneeling in this very circle, the woman young and smiling as she made her first sacrifice. Each life fed something ancient and patient. This house wasn't abandoned, it was hungry. The ground shook violently. The candles flared, a brilliant, bloody red. And from the center of the circle, something massive began to rise. Its body was a shifting mass of darkness and bone. Horns scraped against the ceiling, its mouth opened, and the chanting of the shadows turned into a chorus of screams. The woman knelt before it. The final vessel has arrived, she announced. The creature turned its empty, pitiless gaze toward me. It felt my thoughts unraveling, my memories draining away like water through cracks in a dam. It reached for me. The shadows forced me forward into the circle. The book fell open, its pages flipping wildly on their own. Blood rose from the floor, wrapping around my legs like thick, warm tendrils. I begged, but the chanting drowned out my voice. The woman touched my forehead and whispered the final words of the spell. The creature screamed. Light exploded outward. The basement walls shattered, and the entire house roared like a dying animal. I woke up on the floor of my bedroom. Morning sunlight streamed through the window. Birds were chirping. The house was completely quiet. My body ached all over, but I was alive. I let out a hysterical laugh and staggered to the bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back, and there, branded across my chest and neck, were the symbols. They pulsed softly, a faint red light under my skin. Then, from downstairs, I heard a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. I went down and opened it. The villagers stood outside, all of them. Their faces weren't pale with fear anymore. They were calm, relieved, even. One of them smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, and said, "The house is finally satisfied." And as they turned to leave, I heard a familiar sound from behind me, the slow, heavy creak of the basement door swinging open. And faintly, from the darkness below, the chanting began again. Shh,